here with George Monk Foreman III, who I'm going to call Monk for the majority of this interview. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Can I
Finally.
just say that we are all really glad that Monk did not get a speeding ticket coming here, because he Zoomed once he realized the interview was in person, which we would have, pivoted, but he made it happen. I just picture you're just blowing by things on the freeway and in front of the house.
Exactly what happened when you said it's in person, and my heart just sunk to the bottom of my shoes. I looked around. I immediately typed in directions on my computer. It was 32 minutes. I was like, I'm out the door. Just grabbed the sweatshirt.
You really did.
The rudest thing I've ever done in my life was just not check my email. I'm so sorry.
No,
but I'm so glad you.
It was so fast. He was here texting his wife to tell
right.
him where he had gone.
Right. And also, if that's the rudest thing you've ever done in your life, then you're a really good person.
I think it might be.
Wow.
I've never been late to an interview ever.
You are a really good person, though. I already know that from our first sit down and our second conversation. To break the ice, even though that kind of broke the ice, but I'm going to ask you to choose a number between 1 and 3, and I'm going to give you a question.
3.
3 is, what's the last thing you've done that you're really proud of?
Oh. That is so hard.
Because there's a lot, right?
There's not that many things.
There's not that many?
Oh my God. I cried.
You cried.
Oh, man.
Yes. Tell us about that.
I was actually proud of myself, and can't really tell you why, but I can say I was proud that I just let it go, which is weird for me to say. We were watching the movie, The Warrior. I was told to watch it I'm taking acting lessons by my acting coach, and we were reading lines from it. And long story short, I watched it with my wife. For some reason, she can't watch a movie that isn't made in the last 2 years. She just can't if it
doesn't
feels
hold her attention.
It just if the cars look dated or anything, she's out. And she was like, "This is awesome, honey." So I woke up the next morning, turned it on, and started. It was 5 a.m. in the morning, and towards the end, the father, he was an alcoholic. Not that my dad's not an alcoholic, but there's just something about the relationship with the sons. And I was just I'm crying, and I'm doing this, and I let it go. And then right at the end, towards the best scene, I just kept crying and crying and crying. And then the internet on my TV stopped working, right?
Oh, no.
So I couldn't stream. So I was like, oh my God. So I pulled up my phone, and I'm I literally told myself this. Oh man, I'm not going to get to cry, because now it's just going to be my phone. I've never said anything like that. I grew up on a ranch in Northeast Texas. You don't cry. And I was like, it's not going to be the same, but I got to finish this movie. And I'm watching it on my iPhone, and I start crying again. And I was not just it was ugly face, and
you
that
boo-hooing?
I just let it go. And I was
Wow.
all right, if my wife catches me, this is going to be bad. But I'm proud that I was able to just boo-hoo. So.
Well, I love that. I love that. And that actually goes into what we're going to talk about with how you were raised and in the very kind of masculine environment in which you were raised. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for that. I am Laura Cathcart-Robbins. This is the only one in the room. But I'm never the only one in this room, because, as usual, my boyfriend, producer, and co-host, Scott Slaughter, who I call Hun, is here as well.
Hi, honey.
Hey, Hun. So we are talking to George Monk. That is his nickname, Foreman III. He is an American entrepreneur, professional boxer, trainer, coach, founder of Everybody Fights, and son of businessman and former 2-time heavyweight champion George Foreman.
Mm-hmm.
So Monk is an entrepreneur, a boxing trainer, former business manager of the legendary businessman, and former 2-time heavyweight champion George Foreman Sr. We're going to go more. Your bio is actually longer than that, but we're going to get into that during the interview.
Or whatever you want.
You're welcome to tell us how you identify if you want.
My name or?
However.
Oh.
Some people like to use pronouns or tell us their race or whatever.
It's interesting. So let's start with Monk or George or G3.
Yes.
When someone says it, I don't actually notice what they say. I just respond, and I look back. Oh, they're calling me. But Monk is one. That's my favorite. It's my dad's. My dad's nickname was Monkey. They call me Monk. And then in terms of gender, he, and the he him. And then in terms of race, I'm learning to call myself Black.
Yes.
That's been a new one for me.
Yeah.
But it's important because it's helping me communicate better. Growing up, I would have said my mom's from St. Lucia. My dad is he's from Northeast Texas.
Right.
And looks as though he's of African descent because I couldn't say the word Black. It's another story, but that's but I would say I'm a Black American.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. St. Lucia, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You have an island mom.
Yes.
Ooh. Island women are very special.
Yeah.
Right? There is just something like one of my best friends, I was her bridesmaid, she was my bridesmaid. I got to learn about island women through her, and it's different. Her experience was so much different growing up in Trinidad and looking like me than mine was growing up here.
Very different.
Very. Sorry, I have my phone on Do Not Disturb. It's ringing.
Stop disturbing me.
I know they're gonna take over the world. Like we give them parameters.
And it's the cleaners. It's like not even anybody good.
It just hit me that a phone decided how I was gonna get to your studio.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second.
Yes. It's like, okay, I got you. Let me show you how to get there. All right. You're one of 10, is that right?
1 of 10, 5 boys, 5 girls.
So tell me the names of your siblings.
All right, let's start with the boys.
Okay.
George Sr. It's my dad. He's not a sibling. Sometimes it feels like that. George Jr., my older brother. I'm George 3. Then George 4, we call him Big Wheel. That's his nickname.
Uh-huh.
George 5, we call him Red.
Okay.
George number 6, we call him Joe. Red was a stop sign, but they kept going. And Joe is after an uncle of his who never had any children, right? Then on the girls' side, women's side, there's Michi, first, Frida, second, Georgetta, third, Natalie, fourth, and Leola. But Frida's middle name is George.
Frida's middle name. So there are 8 Georges. Is that right?
And one of my cousins, my dad's nephew, is also George. He predates me, George Edward Dumas.
Amazing. Amazing. What year were you born?
1983.
1983. So, and then you told me that you thought you were named after the grill. Is that right?
No.
No?
I came before that.
Right.
But I have a brother that's young enough to have thought that. And people, but people all the time think
people think you're named after the grill. Right. And not your father.
And it's not far-fetched. There's people who are named after Mike Tyson, and he's still like an active,
Yeah.
But yeah, they're like, oh my God, your parents named you after the grill.
And you're like, no, after my dad. It's a family name. So your father's famous for 2 things, right? He's famous for being a 2-time heavyweight champion, and being an entrepreneur. And so I want to just talk about the heavyweight champion part, like what it was like for you growing up. By the time you were born, he was doing like color commentary and that kind of thing. Is that right?
Not quite. It's interesting. So my dad, interesting story with him. I'll cut through the bullet points real quick. 17, I think dropped out of school. He's like 15 or 16, 17, 18, I believe. Yep. Started boxing at the Job Corps. And February of 1967, so by the summer of 68, it's the first time he boxed. The summer of 68, he had an Olympic gold medal in the heavyweight division. And that was his 25th fight period ever, amateur fight. Then won a championship in 1973. Went back to actually learn how to box after that. Muhammad Ali took that from him in 1974.
I want to talk about that for a second.
Okay.
but go ahead, and then we'll go back to that.
And so then retired in 76, became a preacher. I was born in 83. 3 years later, 10 years after he left the ring, he puts us around the table and says, I'm going back. Now I didn't really fully understand what that meant, but I knew we needed money, right? We were running around in a passenger van, and he had leveraged the ranch, every piece of property, everything, because he owned everything outright. He had never believed in mortgages. We took out a mortgage on everything to pay the bills, and he's like, I'm bankrupt, so I got to go back. And so I got to see him just like traipsing back and forth to the gym as a 330-pound-year-old man, walking circles in the living room because he was too big to go outside. He felt too big to go outside. and then just killing himself training. And then I remember I was about
Wait, how old was he?
At that point he would have been 36,
Okay.
37ish. And I remember one night somebody said, and he had been fighting. We would just see him leave and come back. He wasn't on TV. He was fighting in these weird towns. But long story short, someone said, "Hey, your dad's fighting. Your dad's on TV." I was at a friend's house, and it was like we were running around the backyard scrambling, like, "Your dad's on TV." I'm like, "My dad's on TV." And he was fighting a guy named Jared Cooney in Atlantic City, and then that was like 89, 90, and then it went from there. And he started doing the color commentary like 92ish.
Okay.
But yeah, I got to see, that the build, the rebuild, if that makes sense.
So you were saying how heavy did you say he was when he was pacing around the living room?
I believe 320.
And what's fighting weight for him?
245 at that age.
245.
Before that was 225.
Yeah. I saw an interview with him where someone asked him if he would leave his brain to science. And you know this, what he said? And then he said, "No one's ever asked me that before." And he said, "The most important thing I think you can learn from my body after I die is that cheeseburgers powered it." He said, "You will find cheeseburgers in this body."
There you go.
So was he was just eating whatever then and not working out?
He was actually extremely, to get up to 300 pounds.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd eat like breakfast was like 2 loaves of bread, cheese. What was this stuff? It was like a special type of like sandwich meat. Was a term for it.
Spam?
It was like spam, but like shaped in the shape of a slice of bread. There's a term for it.
Okay.
And like we ate so much food. And there's one thing, like, no matter like how much we didn't have the cars he wanted us to have, we were going to have a lot of food. I think that was a big reason he went back to boxing, because he never wanted to give that up.
Right.
And we had a youth center. He didn't want to give that up either, but the food. But he was very disciplined in training camp. And he always said, like, everybody wants to do sports performance drugs and all that. He's like, "You have a gift, you can eat." And that was his thing. But they joked because for some reason, like, he just couldn't get the weight all the way off and have the body that reflected how in shape he was. I'm not sure what that was all about. But he was like, he would starve and like fast and everything people do to make weight for boxing. He did all that stuff, but he just was still like somewhat round looking. So they would just joke about the hamburgers, and he was like, "You know what? I'm just going to play into this.
Yes.
I can't fight it,
Yes.
And he started showing up at the press conferences with burgers,
Right.
And knocking people out. So
And then the grill eventually.
Yep.
Right.
And then the grill. Yep.
So back to the Rumble in the Jungle.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I was little then. I remember it kind of, but it was on the periphery for me.
Mm-hmm.
So really, what I really know about it came in the movie Ali.
Yeah.
Like that was my real introduction to it. I know that Scott probably knew more about it than I did. But so I'm just going to read a little bit about it.
Sure.
One of the greatest sporting events of all time, projected record-breaking audience of 1 billion tuning in to watch the fight. This was in 1974. Including 50 million people via pay-per-view screenings in theaters. That's
in person, like they all showed up in a theater,
in
not
a
just
theater.
at home.
I mean, that was unheard of at that time.
Unheard of.
It's unheard of now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were 60,000 people in Kinshasa. Thank you. Zaire. And then, so that was, your dad was a heavyweight champ. Ali won that. Famous rope-a-dope, blah, blah, blah. And then, were they friends immediately after that, or did it take a while?
It took a while, right? And, he tells the story more and more over the years, but I'll tell what I've learned.
Okay.
So their friendship started in the 60s. And there's a relationship there. So Ali's first trainer coming into the pros was a guy named Archie Moore. And him and Archie couldn't quite get along. That's a whole nother story. So eventually he moved and his trainer became Angelo Dundee, right? He moved his training camp to Miami. So then Archie became my dad's trainer in the early 70s. And then in the 90s, Angelo was my dad's trainer, right? He's like the only guy to ever beat him. He's like, I got to have him in my corner. So there's a lot of connection there. But the point is, in the late 60s, I mean, think about it. Ali won his title in 64 and the gold medal in 1960. So my dad on the street in Texas, working in kitchens that he couldn't be served at, you saw this guy saying, "I'm beautiful," and all the things he would say. And he could box. That was the biggest sport back then. And my dad thought he was the baddest guy in the street, and this is the baddest heavyweight. He idolized him, looked up to him, just like anybody else. So wins his Olympic gold medal and starts being invited to be a sparring partner with guys like Sonny Liston, who Ali had beat. And he's in the mix. It's a small community, just a few managers, a few promoters in Vegas. And Ali sees him, and he starts getting in his face a little bit. You know, first it was nice to meet you and all that, but getting in his face, teasing him. And the first time my dad said he was a little worked up, and he walked up to his hotel room at Caesars, I think it may have been one of the casinos, and he said Ali gave him a call and said, "Hey George, that's just for play, man. It's just joke. That, you know, that's how we have fun." And they would kept that going because, you know, he looks at him like, "You're my hero, and you just made me feel like,"
Right.
you know?
Yeah, you hurt my feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was that relationship, but he knew he might have to compete against him. Now going into the fight in '74, you know, Ali had left and come back because he, you know, the draft situation, and he was trying to regain his title. So 1971, he fights Joe Frazier, just to give context to it. And Joe Frazier is now the legitimate champion, but you can't really be legitimate unless you beat Ali because they stripped him of his title. Well, Frazier runs through Ali, knocks him down. Ali survived and got up. So that's the first guy to ever beat Ali and fully took care of him, and just Ali survived. Like how he did it, I don't know. Then a guy named Ken Norton fights Ali, breaks his jaw, right? So now you have this blemish. So everybody's like, Ali's washed up. At 33, 34, that was old back then. Like, it was very old in boxing back then.
Yeah.
Anything over 30. And now he's got 2 losses, right? So then my dad comes on the scene, 73, knocks out Joe Frazier in 2 rounds, knocks out Ken Norton in 2 rounds. The only guys to ever beat this guy. So, George, you got to take this fight against Ali. You know, the payday's $5 million, and multiple people wanted to give him the shot. The promoters wanted to, but he didn't want to do it. And because you beat him, you beat the old guy. You get beat by the old guy, but it's $5 million. Oh, George, he needs a payday. Now he can retire. And it was customary to give the old champ a payday so he could retire.
Oh, really?
Yep. And transition their fans to the new champion.
Yes,
right? That was always like, everybody knew you're supposed to do that tradition. So finally he said, you know what? I don't care. Like, you guys want me to kill him, I'll kill him. And then they were like, well, he wants $5 million too. Who wants to fight this guy? Sure, I don't care what he makes. And then Ali, they signed the contract, and that's a whole nother story of how that contract got signed. It was the birth of Don King. But it was, and Don King wouldn't have become Don King, in my opinion, had he not been going through a divorce. Another story. But Ali, this guy that they've had this kind of relationship with, they never crossed paths. He's supposed to be on his way out. There's no reason for them to fight each other. Now he's talking. And he would talk trash so bad that even if you were his friend, which him and Frazier were friends before they fought, they took care of each other, brothers essentially, you just couldn't, at some point you just had to hate him, you know? And that was his game, because he needed you to come out with this attitude that you're going to wreck me. That always played into his hand, and he got to my dad.
Wow.
And my dad thought, like, yeah, I was going to try to kill you anyway, but now I really want to get you. And there's more to that, but yeah, he was the only guy, and to me, he was the only one to conquer my dad mentally, right? Now there was a lot of other things going on in that fight. I mean, they messed with the ropes and all types of stuff, but I think he always said, it's my dad's words, had they done it again, he thinks Ali still would have beat him, because he was just a great man, the greatest man to ever put on boxing gloves. Probably not the best boxer ever, but the greatest man to ever wear boxing gloves. And it takes a man to beat a wrecking machine like that.
Wow. That's a lot of inside information. No, I'm fascinated.
Yeah, it's an interesting story.
I mean, if we had more time, I want to hear about the Don King thing, but
Yeah,
I want to talk more about you. So Ali's trash talking got to your dad. You've seen the fight?
Yeah, many times.
Do you think your dad lost?
No, I mean, definitely. Like, and Ali knocked him out, and but there's a couple of things, right? Without any of the ropes were loose. They're not supposed to be loose.
Why was that?
Because they needed every advantage to beat him.
For Ali?
Yeah, because Ali was slightly old, and he was going to lay on the ropes and get beat. And when you're in the ropes, when the punches hit you, the ropes give, so it takes a little sting off. And then if you happen to get hit with a shot that would have made you fall to the ground,
you get held up.
You get 3 or 4 seconds to come back
yeah.
to. And so they loosened the rope so he could lay on them. And I'm happy that Ali beat him because, like, we have something to talk about, right? So I'm not negative, by the way. I don't want to. But when you watch that, this teaches you about sports, competitive sports. The guy in his corner, a guy named Dick Sadler, had never done this. He would get in the corner with my dad before the fight in the locker room. Say, "You're gonna do this. You're gonna hit him on that, like all types of tough talk, savagery, pure savagery." Dick Sadler walks over to Ali and just touches gloves. Oh man, ha ha ha, and comes back. I pointed it out to my dad. He's like, "What?" He watched. He goes, I never noticed that." Archie Moore, who knew Ali really well, who had been in my dad's training camps 3 times before, was not allowed to speak to my dad during the fight. And this Archie Moore is the greatest, probably one top 5 greatest fighters ever. Has more 120 knockouts, something like that. So he's not allowed to speak to him. His whole point, the whole purpose of him being there is to speak to my dad, right? To coach him because he has so much experience. Got his first title at 37, kept it for 10 years. And then if you watch the count, so what happens is they taught my dad, if you ever get knocked down, it never happened. When you look up, before you get up, look at your corner. They'll tell you when to get up, so you don't get up and fall back down because they'll wave it. So if you look at him, he hits the ground like he's lucid. He looks up at his corner, and they're telling him not to get up. And then right as they tell them to get up, it's a count of 8. The referee goes like this.
Wow.
And so
was it short?
It was a short count. It was just a short. It's like you don't even have to hold the stopwatch. But the point is, had he gotten up that night, it wouldn't have been great. But it was like we got to do everything to beat this guy.
Yeah. And
he always knew that. It was his responsibility to go out there and get the win. So that's still not an excuse, you know. So.
Wow.
Like he knew that they were always trying to figure out how to beat him. You know, but.
It's weird. While you're talking, I can see your dad. And I don't think I saw that when you and I first met in the same way. But just as soon as you started talking about boxing, like something in you transformed.
Well, I'll say this, like I have a lot of him in me. And what I mean by that is I was the right age where everybody would go on vacation as a youngster. And someone always had to be with my dad. He's never alone. So I would stay home. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So me and him would like go on fishing, like go fish, drives and all that. But then 18, 19, 20, his travel companion exclusively, then his manager. Right. So I'm everywhere with him, like managing his racehorses, the children, the homes, everything, every business transaction. So we're like always together. Then when I slowly started to put that down, my brothers took on that. He became my boxing trainer for 6 years. So I'm with him 6 to 7 days a week. And that's about as intimate as a relationship you get.
So there's nature and nurture there. It's just like you got it from both sides for sure.
And we talk boxing. And
you talk boxing. So you're growing up and your dad is this super famous, thanks honey, super famous boxer, businessman. You're growing up in a house surrounded by Georges, other Georges. What did you want to do back then? Like, what do you think you were going to be when you grew up, like as a kid?
It changed 2 times. First, I was going to be a pilot. I knew that. You couldn't tell me anything. Or a stockbroker, right? So like at age like 15 or 16, I'm reading like Kiplinger every week or every issue, with a sheet of paper following stocks with the newspaper, and then Yahoo came on. And that was that. But then coterminously begged my parents to go to prep school in Boston when I was 11. I asked for it, didn't cry, never got homesick. 11th grade, 10th grade, I asked to move to a military school because it's the only one with an airport. So I said I would suck it up and be at a military school so I could have access to the airport to be a pilot.
Right.
And that was the plan. And went to the Air Force Academy for a recruiting program. They told me my sitting height was too high to fly the fighter jet. So I said, nope, not going there. Ended up going to Pepperdine. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to be a stockbroker. That's what I want to do. And then at some point, my dad needed me for the management piece. And then I kind of digressed. Yeah. Transferred to Rice from Pepperdine. Switched my degree from business to kinesiology. Graduated. And then I just wanted to, like, it would just be the best manager I could be. And then at that point, I got into boxing.
Yourself.
Myself.
Yeah. But as a kid, you weren't looking at your dad thinking, I'm going to do that.
No.
Not at all. Why?
Because it just meant work to us. Like, we didn't get to enjoy, like, the hand raising. We weren't even allowed to go to the fight night. Like, so we didn't get to, like, per diems and rooms and, like, everything that people enjoy, the press. We didn't see that. We just saw him killing himself in the gym.
Mm.
Us had to be our life had to be regimented too during training camp.
Yeah.
And we were like, all this means is work and knee surgeries and all that. So I was like, why would I do that?
Right. That doesn't sound fun at all.
Ah, man, go get a job.
So you alluded to this in the beginning when I asked you how you identified, and you talked about learning to identify as Black.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, just growing up and then probably as a young adult, which you still are, but a younger adult.
39.
I wanted to ask you about feeling Black, because coming from a famous family, right? And then literally living that jet set lifestyle.
Yeah,
Sometimes fame and money trump race.
that's right.
And that's all people see. So did you feel Black out in the world?
It stopped. It was so funny. So my mother, growing up, she never really made us feel Black, right? And what I mean by that is she's from St. Lucia, so she came in her brain, because she didn't grow up with everything that America tells you.
Right.
She would talk about I'm so enamored by the story of the Black American. I hear my mom say that, and I'm like 5, like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the Black American. What are you?
Yeah.
So I had that, and but she understands she must identify as a Black American, because that's how people may look at her. She's your complexion, but she didn't grow up thinking like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, but I remember being in school and a kid calling me Nigger, right? And pushing me, and I have to fight. And that would happen when I was in Texas. And so that was weird. So I'm like, okay, I'm Black, or, whatever there's a difference here, right?
Right.
But I didn't feel that at home. And then my dad would not, like, you would be better off saying the F word. I'm even scared to say that, the F word, than saying, like, oh yeah, my friend, he's white. Or my friend, he's Black, or Mexican. Even Mexican was like a little edge, like from Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to say like Anglo-Saxon or whatever words you can come up with to be like,
Right.
set up a picture, create an image, and so
Instead of race.
Right. And he would say like, that like we're all the same anyway, and blah 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 blah. And he's like, but we just knew you just cannot say that. So then going into probably 8 or 9, he came into this tremendous amount of wealth. And then, as you said, I never thought about it that way. When we would go anywhere, like we were at church, school,
Mm-hmm.
at boarding school, I didn't even feel that way, because it was like there were people, everyone wanted to be your friend, because my dad was like on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Right.
I just didn't know what a bat mitzvah was. But when I go home, like everywhere we went was with our dad. So we were like meeting the president on a private jet at the Four Seasons, like all this stuff in limo. So no, they don't treat you like you're
Black.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you stop feeling like it. And I actually just recently, I'm starting to be aware of, oh, I'm Black, like, or I'm different, or some people may see me as different, whether they do or not. I have to be aware of it. That's a new thing for me.
Well, and then you told me the
weird.
story, that's weird, about being in military school, and there was like some kind of diversity.
That was a moment.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So there was like one of those diversity summits, that in the early,
And tell me where you were.
Oh, sorry, I was in Culver, Indiana.
Culver, Indiana.
So for those of you who don't know, it's not that
Yeah.
far from like, I think it was like a local like headquarters for the Ku Klux Klan.
Sure.
And we were at something, I think in Plymouth, and it was like different schools that have like a diversity like union or something like that club would meet up, and there'd be talks and lunch. And we go out into the lobby, and I think they call him a Grand Dragon or something like that.
Yes, they do.
And he's in like the black and red look,
Yeah.
But he's just like walking around like having coffee, like, hey.
At the diversity summit.
And so
That's weird. Who invited him?
so
I mean,
I'm
that's a scene out of a movie.
It really is. Yeah.
he was carrying himself kind of like a priest. And I looked at the lady, because where do you look? You look to the people you're with, and she was like, her eyes popped out of her head, and she's like, let's get out of here. And she grabbed us and said, let's,
Yeah.
I
Did
felt
you?
Black.
Yeah. You felt Black. Were you intuitively scared when you saw him,
I was
or just curious?
taken aback.
Taken aback.
I
Okay.
wasn't afraid. That's also something I don't know in my genetics, but I don't have a lot of fear
Yeah.
to a detriment. But I was just like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like Scott just said, it sounds like something out of a movie.
Yeah, it's
Albatross.
like there he
Right.
is. Like I've heard about this
Bigfoot.
guy my whole life, and there he is
Right?
at lunch.
at the
Bigfoot.
diversity summit.
Wow.
That's just so weird. So I wanted to just for a minute talk about the colorism in your family, because you had talked to me a little bit about that.
Oh, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
What I felt was, and I remember this, I didn't feel hate. I felt belief. And that's what threw me off.
Tell me what you mean.
Because
by
you
that.
just, like I said, you know how people are in like the waiting room, let's have some coffee. And, you know, like he was just like carrying himself like a priest. Like,
Yeah.
no. And so obviously there's hate, but the belief is so much more dangerous than hate to me, you know? That's what I remember.
Yes,
like, oh my God, I would believe this stuff. So go ahead. You were saying.
No, I love that you said that. Thank you for that. And then, yeah, I was just going to go back to, because like, who was called Blackie in your family? Was that you?
That was me. You remember that?
So, and you said that your grandmother, was this your dad's mom?
Yeah.
Or so she kind of had a chip on her shoulder about color.
Yeah.
Right. So talk to me about growing up in a family with the nickname Blackie and what that was like for you.
Well, first of all, the person who gave me that nickname, is my sister.
Okay.
And Frida, who was your complexion, slightly what we would call heavy, you know, she was heavier. And she just had a chip on her shoulder, and she would, anything I said about her, she'd be like, you'll never wipe that black off your skin. So that felt black, but more towards with my sister, not like my friends.
Right.
But, and then anytime I like got a award or like anybody said, good job, Monk, she'd be like, all right, Blackie. So that was a thing.
Okay.
And I'm the most dark complected person in my family. Now my grandma, to your point, she's like very dark, right? And my dad wasn't, which is part of the reason that she had to leave where they were born, and why he has it. His name should be Moorhead. It's Foreman.
I see. So
so-
there was someone else.
Yes.
Okay.
So she was born on a sharecropping farm in Marshall, Texas. And for those of you guys who don't know, like this whole Juneteenth movement, like we grew up knowing about that because in Texas, like we're from Marshall, and that was like one of the last places that the Confederacy could like hold it down.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And so that's where my dad's from. And so, long story short, like there was real racism. They're like the real, like in the movies type, like slavery and all that. That was like the last place that they got the notice, basically. Galveston, and it worked its way up. And so, so yeah, like they would cut the tires, you know, the big pieces of wood on the railroad, cross tires. And that's what they did for a living, her and all her sisters. And, you know, the people who would come to buy them were what we call white, not black. And sometimes they wouldn't even pay them for them, and so on and so forth. And you can just imagine, like, just watch the movies, right? They actually lived that. And so she grew up with a chip on her shoulder and telling me that, you know, I could never marry a white woman or date a white woman, or she would first kill me. I'll kill you if you ever bring a white woman in here. So I grew up with that, and then obviously, which is awkward, but she didn't mean it. She was sweet as can be. She's the one that told me to go to boarding school and get out of Houston. And then obviously I had the thing with my sister. But you know what? Like, to me, I just always, like, I would see how my dad would act, and I would see how my mom would act. And I would say, this just must be something people have an issue with, but I don't.
But you don't.
Like, this is, you know, there's, like, people differ on politics. A lot of it's BS, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things to me. I just never considered it as something I really needed to embrace or absorb.
Well, it's actually really progressive. I mean, people are getting to the point right now where I hear people talking about how race is a social construct. Like, right? It's not really a thing. It's something that people made up so that they could have a class system. And I was talking a little bit about my friend from Trinidad, and when she moved here at age 20 and saw her first form for college, and they asked her to check race, she didn't know what to check because in Trinidad she was medium brown. Because they went by color. Yeah. So it was light brown, medium brown, dark brown. So she turned to the person next to her and was like, what is this? Black. Like, I'm definitely not black. I'm not white. Like, none of these apply. So it's a totally different mindset. Yeah. And I think it's really progressive. And, you know, and actually, I mean, you can tell me how well it prepared you for the outside world who thinks in those terms.
I think it just, you know, it did two things. Like, you know, like if someone, for me, I've gotten so many people, and I'm not like proud of this, but we're talking about it. So many people tell me like, I don't feel white around you.
Yeah.
I have heard
Yeah.
that so many times. So I can only guess that means I don't show up with any chip on my shoulder or any. I don't show up
Yeah.
with the Black experience in the room, which I should, by the way. I should show up with that because there's been some negative things that I've been through and I shouldn't have. I don't know what that means, but I've heard that a lot. So long story short, I just don't see race. Like I see it as that's a person. And I think that's something that, thank God, I don't know. I have it. Like no one has to talk me out of my biases. I probably have them, but not as deeply as,
Yeah.
as some people do. But the other thing is I've been able to look at it kind of like an affliction, like not an affliction, but like if you don't think the sun's going to rise tomorrow ever again, you're going to do some silly stuff tonight. And or if you don't think like grass is green and like you have a problem with that, you're probably going to do some silly things like when it's, like if agriculture becomes a thing and we don't have internet again. My point is like if you have a false belief, it's going to hurt you at some point. It's going to hurt the people around you. It's going to limit you. So if someone feels that way, I actually have sympathy for them. I don't know if empathy is the right word.
Yeah.
And I
But
think
you understand.
I'm like, yeah, you just believe the wrong thing. We need to fix that. But I don't have like hatred. And I must thank my dad, my mom. I don't know who to thank, but I don't. And that's what it's been able to bring to my life.
Well, I think it's just beautiful that you have your experience and you're sticking to it. Like
Confusion. I'm confused for
well,
sure.
But also that you're not conforming to the kind of popular experience that's out there because it's not your experience.
Come on.
I wrote an article that went viral called "A White Woman Told Me She Didn't Think of Me as Black." And it's kind of what you're talking about. And what she was saying was, I just think of you as a person. Her verbiage was questionable.
Yep.
and so, that's what the article was about. But I get that. I get what you're saying.
I've had someone tell me real quick, because I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
A new neighbor, I'd moved to a neighborhood, and he goes, all right, come here. So a lot of people in this neighborhood, they're going to have a hard time with you, and the fact that you're Black. I don't care who you are, right? I treat you like anybody else. Let me tell you, my daughter's dating a Black guy. He's nice, he's articulate, he's kind. You'd never know he's Black.
Articulate.
And you would never know.
know. And it's then that's when I have to remember my face as I'm listening to those kind of comments.
Yeah.
And we had a guest on right in the beginning of the podcast who said no more emotional labor. Like I'm not going to educate people about what it means to be Black.
Emotional labor.
Yes. And so he decided he's not doing that. So that person would not get an education from him. But it's a constant, like, do I say that's a compliment? I'm sure you're intending it to be. However, I
get paid to educate people.
And this is in 2021.
2020.
2020. Yeah.
We
Wow.
became friends though.
Good. Good. So back to boxing.
Yeah.
When you decided that you didn't want to box, I read on the internet, so now you can tell me if this is true, that you kept it a secret for a little bit.
Yeah.
That was true?
You know what?
What?
Good call. So actually, it's funny. When I was at Pepperdine, I had a quick moment that there was a boxing club in the Valley. And I was just like curious because I had gone to a Lennox Lewis fight and he walked past me and I looked up at him. I was like, he's not that big. And he was like, he is big. And I went and they let me spar the next day. And the guy was like, oh, you got something. You should da-da-da-da-da. And I saw a picture of my dad on the wall and he told me he never wanted me to box. I do remember this now. And I was like, I got to get out of here because if this guy tells someone in the boxing community that George is, and that was that. And then it was years later that I wanted to lose weight, but the minute I was in the gym, every day I'd ask myself, that's how I got into boxing, to lose 80 pounds was the number, 70. But yeah, after the first 2 days, I was like, maybe I could do this. But I couldn't tell my dad. And I was like, hey, I lost the weight. I think I want to have one amateur boxing match. And that was the truth. But I was curious. And then we had my first fight and he was like, you want to do it again? And I didn't have to think about it. I said, yep.
You liked it?
I liked it.
Did you love it?
I didn't love the punching people part. In the ring, some people love to fight,
Yeah.
I like what was after and I love training camp.
Like the conditioning?
Yeah, the training camp, the discipline, the lifestyle of training. I love that. And then the fight part was just something I kind of had to do.
What didn't you like about punching people?
Because like It's weird. Like, you want to do it a certain way, right? For me, I don't want to just hurt. And I remember hitting a guy one time. It was like my 6th fight, and his eyes popped wide open, like in terror.
Yeah.
And then I knew, like, okay, we should just stop this now. But I had to go ahead and finish him, or else, like, he would wake up and come get me. And that was a weird thing, you know. And to be so lucid, like aware, and knowing that I could stop and not hit him if I wanted to. But I had to. I didn't really like that. But the other thing I didn't like is that, and a lot of boxers suffer from this, the whole training camp lifestyle and the fight part, it's super narcissistic. It's like, it's a real narcissistic ecosystem, and it has to be that way. And the best fighters play into that because you need that when you walk in the ring. This is all about me, and I'm going to crush you, or you're not going to touch me. And that, for me, I don't know, it was not fulfilling, that part of it.
Wow.
And I think without that, I don't think I could have been a great fighter.
He's a good guy.
I know.
Right?
I was thinking it, like
issues.
being like that just wasn't true to who you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really it.
Yeah. That's really something. I've never heard anybody say that.
Well, and you had a pretty outstanding record. Is that correct?
It was cool. I only about 6 of my 16 fights were a challenge, right? The rest were not. But there was 2, like, I got up off the canvas in one of them, so that was a challenge. So I'm proud of that.
So tell me about your training, though, because I heard some on the internet, some really crazy things like dragging a Jeep, like a whole Jeep.
Yeah, the entire thing.
Yeah,
a mile.
Tell me what you did.
I think, my dad didn't want me to fight. I'm now coming to terms with that. And he really didn't, but he was like, if you're going to, I'm going to train you, of course. It was a weird thing. And I think, looking back, he must have been trying to make me quit. But also trying to find out if he does quit, then I know he shouldn't fight. If he doesn't, maybe he is meant to, and I'll train him.
Yeah.
And so the first thing he did before he started training me, because I had been in the gym by myself for a year, he's like, okay, put that to the side. We're going to start from scratch. And he's like, we're going to run 10 miles in boots. And I was like, all right. And so a couple of weeks went by, and he's like, did you run your 10 miles yet? He's just, you do it. No. So finally, there was a hurricane. We had to divert, went to Dallas from New York, and we were driving to our ranch. And he pulled over at Famous Footwear and I'm a size 14, bought me a size 13 pair of boots from, discounted, whatever brand. And we get to the ranch. He's like, we're going to go do our 10 miles. I'd never run more than 3 in my life. And I've been working on the recumbent prior to that, 3 or 4 weeks before. I hadn't been training like that. And he's like, let's go. And we went. I never walked. Jog, run. Jog, run. Don't know how I did it. Still have scars on my heels.
I was just about to say, your shoes were too small.
And by the time we got done, he drove behind me in a little buggy the whole time. I pulled off my shoes.
Oh, he wasn't running.
Oh, no.
That's great.
We were burning gas, and there was blood. You could see it all the way out of my boots before I pulled them off. And I had scars, and then he was like, I'll see you in the gym in a few days. And then we did that, and then we went back out. He made me pull a Jeep for a mile. And then finally one day I'm pulling
pull a Jeep for a mile.
Another vehicle on a horse track, a muddy horse track. If anyone's ever been on a muddy horse track, you can't really pull anything. And I'm pulling. I can't get the thing to move, and my head dips right into the mud. And I put down my head and tried to get all my leverage and just drive that thing 1 inch. And he goes, stop. That's it. And he's like, I just needed to see that you would do that.
Wow.
Now I'll train you. And we went to work from there. But I think one time I passed out and hit the ground so hard, I woke up. He didn't say anything, but he just took me to get an IV quietly. But I just think he wanted to see that I was willing essentially to push myself to the brink of death to get the job done, because that was his only edge. And I think he wanted me to have that. But thankfully I never had to use that.
Wow. That's very cinematic, that whole thing. It's very like Mr. Miyagi, Karate Kid.
I thought I was dying once in the shower.
Right? All right. So we talked about school. You became your dad's business manager.
Yeah.
For how long?
Let's see, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So 6.5, almost 7 years.
And I'm assuming you did well because the business is good.
Yeah. Well, I got handed a slam dunk. So at the time, I was just about to turn 21, and my dad had a falling out with his roadie, so to speak, and not a falling out. He did something that my dad was like, I can't be around someone who's doing that. and then an issue with his manager at the time, who was his lawyer. And he said, you're my manager now. And so the first thing I did was negotiate a contract extension with Meineke. And then we had the grill, which had sold over 100 million units in 2001, which was more than any iPod at the time, which was cool, right?
Right.
And all I had to do is say 1 in 3 households has a grill. Can we get a T-shirt in there? Can we get a watch in there? So can we get them to buy one other product? And so, yes, we were successful. Yeah, we did great. And I also had the benefit of they were running, I don't know, $3, $4, $5 million of ads at night for the grill.
Yes,
so
they
we
were.
had that media dryer. Yeah.
Yes, I remember those ads.
So I benefited, and I could go leverage that with other businesses. So yes, I did well, but the grill business, I did not build that, and I was
Right.
able to leverage that.
And then you decided to create your own business in the boxing world, right? Tell me about that.
So along the way of fighting, my dad, when he started training me, he said, if I'm going to train you, you have to train other people. And he had closed our boxing gym because of poor management, unsupervised sparring. I was like, what am I going to teach them, Dad? I don't know how to box. He said, teach them whatever I taught you that day. About 4 years later, I had a team of 13 amateur boxers, and I realized that most of them, the people that were coming to the gym, that team, that was like 20% of the people that came to the gym. The rest just wanted to be in the atmosphere. They would
Right.
pretend they wanted
Yeah.
to box just to be around the culture. And so I always told myself, I was watching a Dave Chappelle interview. I was like maybe 13-0 at the time. And he was talking about how he convinced his dad to let him do comedy for a living. And his dad said, the likelihood of you succeeding there is so low, and da-da-da-da-da. And finally, his dad, I think, was a professor or something. He said, Dad, if I can make a teacher salary doing comedy, wouldn't that be a success? And his dad was like, you got me, right? You have to see the interview. And I told myself, if I can make a teacher salary, which I thought was $35,000 a year with benefits, teaching boxing, I would put boxing down myself in a heartbeat. And I was visiting a friend in Boston where I'd gone to boarding school. We went to see, I was taking some time off from the sport, just like a couple weeks. I saw a gym on the BU campus that was charging $140 a month. A nasty gym in Southie, still there, that was charging $130 a month. And Equinox was charging $156. And I did put on my boots and jogged the whole city to do my
The
road work.
boots?
Boots.
Not the same boots.
These are nice military grade Marine like
But you
pre-broken
jog
in
in boots.
Still to this day.
Wow. Okay.
Just more comfortable now in the boots.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, what's going on here? And I was like, and then I did my math and I said, this is in 2 weeks. I was in Boston. I did my math and I said I could run a business at 500 members at 130, which is what they charge, and give Equinox-like amenities and do what I learned from my dad's youth center, which is fitness with boxing, it's both, and train people the way he trained me to the brink of death. Not quite. Functional training, though.
Right.
That's what they call it now.
Do you have the IVs ready?
People pay for that.
I have the insurance.
You have the insurance.
And I said, this works at 500 members. And I never left.
Wow.
I still have that same carry-on suitcase. I had somebody put all my stuff in storage. And I stayed there until I got the thing open. And we opened. In Boston. 15,000 square foot boxing gym. 4 classrooms, rainfall showers. It was like literally a psycho, like a psycho built it. Juice bar, physical therapy, sauna, steam room. Wow. Nicer equipment than Equinox at the time. And this 100-person circuit downstairs. And we won Best Gym in Boston our first year. We opened up with 600 members, which means I was cash flow positive month 1.
Which is unheard of.
Yeah, that stuff's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And so then we just kept doing it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And so then talk to me about craft boxing.
Yeah, so after growing Everybody Fights to we got 12 locations, over 170,000 people through our doors. And I was like, well, people like boxing. But you can only open so many gyms. So like every time we open a gym, we have to shell out $3 million. And I was like, it was like betting. It's like going all in on a bet every like 12 months. And I was like,
exhausting.
And I was like, and number 2, I wanted to touch more people. So long story short, I started Craft because number 1, I wanted to do smaller format classes, be more intimate. With EBF, I was doing 140 people per hour across 4 classrooms. This, we do 15 people per hour, small batch boxing. So as a physical facility in Calabasas is our first location, I wanted to do a small batch and just charge more, just a little bit more. So that's piece number 1. Piece number 2, how do we touch more people? Well, we saw these franchises that go in and out of business, but the big box gyms don't, and they get support from the banks. and they did that during COVID. But long story short, I said, let me just put boxing studios in their gym. They already have 8 to 10,000 members. They don't know how to teach boxing. They know how to do everything else, and I can learn from them. They'll never go out of business. And so Craft Boxing is, we export boxing fitness to big box gyms.
So smart.
And Calabasas is, that's home base.
Right.
That's it. We just want more people to box, and we figured we can teach it, but they have the homes for the people. Like, why try to keep it all to ourselves, you know?
Yeah. Wow. And you're married. You have a daughter.
Yes.
Would your grandmother have to kill you?
No.
No. You married a black woman?
No. I did not. I did not.
Did not. Okay.
I did not. But which is interesting too. And it's just the timing. And I don't see race. Had I saw it, I would have married a black woman. Like, I would have been like, I'm not gonna marry a white woman.
Right,
I put it that way. But it just like, it happened, and it worked out. And my family loves her, and I know my grandma would love her, because she's cool and she's chill, and she doesn't bring her problems like everybody else does, which my grandmother didn't like.
That's a huge gift. Someone who doesn't bring problems into
yeah. So,
the lack of drama.
So she may have tried to kill me, but I think that would have been her.
She would have forgiven.
It would have been her favorite granddaughter.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so craft boxing is in Calabasas, but there are craft boxing gyms in other gyms.
Yep.
Around the.
So currently we're in Good Life gyms in Canada. So Good Life's like between them, and they have 4 other brands. That's the largest gym chain in the world.
Cool.
Single largest one. But anyway, we're only in 1 right now, 7 by the end of the year, and hopefully 75 plus over the next couple of years. And then we're exclusive with them in Canada and the U.S. I can't say who we're talking to.
Okay.
But if all goes well, we'll have craft boxing available in New York, the what do they call it? The Virginia, Baltimore region.
Mm-hmm.
There's a DM. They call it DM something. Texas, Midwest.
The
I'm looking
the Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
The Mid-Atlantic
Okay.
region.
Mid-Atlantic, Southern California, an operator that has a bunch of gyms there. And if all goes well, we could look up end of next year and have 50 plus gyms open. And then the next year, close to 150.
That's dope.
Inside
Right on.
places with amenities.
Yeah. Yes. That's amazing. And I love that thinking that got you to say, hey, I can do this without having to open an entire huge gym with all the amenities.
Yep.
I can give my product, right?
Yes.
To them. And they're going to eat it up, because who wouldn't want to learn boxing? That's all of my friends, because like we're all in our 50s, but boxing is the way to like get back in shape, right?
It is. And then if someone says, hey, we're actually going to teach you slowly over the course of our program the fundamentals, you might say, well, I could defend myself and not just throw punches on the bag. And that's what we bring. And it's great workout. We don't get in the way of the workout, but you're learning. And I think self-defense is the new it's a new fitness.
It is.
Trend. I think that's going to be
No
the new
pulling
trend.
Jeeps?
Well, we're working on retreats.
Okay.
So during the retreats, we'll do that. We need a little bit more land.
And do you have everybody wearing boots when they work out?
That will. I am now.
Okay.
That's a good point. We get sponsored by
I think
Banner
you
Boots.
should. Wow. Thank you so much. This was, I told Scott, I said, I don't know what this conversation is going to be, but it's going to be fun. I said, he's such a, like, you can tell how kind you are, and it just emanates from you, and you have this light spirit, which is just really attractive. And I'm really happy that you came in and zoomed over.
Thank you.
So that we could do this interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mon.
I appreciate you guys. I've really enjoyed the interview. You guys are so warm, and thanks for letting me ramble. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm George Foreman III, and I'm the only one who was never the only one in the room.